Good morning. Today's true story is in 1 Samuel chapter 13, verses 1 to 14. If you have a red booklet, there's also another story in 1 Samuel chapter 15, verses 1 to 35. So if you've read or heard any stories from history or seen the news, you'll have learned about all different kinds of leaders. Good leaders, bad leaders, good leaders that turned out bad, or leaders who did good and bad things. But no leader has ever been perfect. Jesus is the only perfect king. Today we'll hear about King Saul and what happened when he made some bad mistakes. God had chosen Saul and given him all the help he needed, but he didn't really trust God. Saul was getting ready for battle against the Philistine army. We read often about battles, don't we? These were difficult and dangerous times, many tribes fighting each other. To survive, God's people did have to fight. Now a huge army of Philistines had come to fight Saul's soldiers. Saul's soldiers were really scared. Some of them hid in caves, and some even crossed the river into another country. The soldiers who stayed with Saul wanted to attack the enemy before any more soldiers ran away and made their army even smaller. They couldn't understand why Saul was waiting. Saul was waiting for Samuel. Samuel had said he would be there in 7 days' time. The Israelites were going to offer a sacrifice to God before the battle, like having a special service. This was Samuel's job. Saul wasn't allowed to do it. Saul waited 1 day, 2 days, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. By now his soldiers were so scared they were shaking. More and more of them were running away. Saul became impatient. He decided he couldn't wait any longer. He forgot to trust God. He knew he was being disobedient. He didn't want to go into battle without offering the sacrifice to God, so he went ahead and did it himself. Our leaders can make mistakes. We need to pray for them. Saul had just finished when Samuel arrived. He asked Saul what he had done. Saul made excuses, but Samuel knew he was lying and told him he'd acted foolishly. He said that Saul would be punished for disobeying. His family wouldn't be kings after him. God had found someone else, a man after his own heart. Saul disobeyed God, and this affected his life and his family. All our leaders need us to pray for them. We've all sinned, and all kings and leaders make mistakes. Only Jesus is the perfect king who never sins. There's Saul and Samuel. Saul went on to make more mistakes. Later in the story in chapter 15, Saul and his army were fighting the Amalekites. Saul's men won. God had given clear instructions to destroy everything after the battle, but Saul disobeyed again. He kept lots of the best animals and spared the defeated king. God sent Samuel to talk with Saul again. Again, Saul made excuses and tried to blame other people. He said he was going to sacrifice the animals and that he'd done this because he was afraid of the people. But if he had put God first and trusted him, he wouldn't have been afraid of people. Samuel told him that he should have obeyed. He said, to obey is better than sacrifice. He reminded Saul again that his kingdom would be given to someone else. Saul grew more and more angry and sad. The story of Saul's life is a sad one. It reminds us that our leaders can be weak and make mistakes, and we can be weak and make mistakes as well. But it also reminds us to trust and obey Jesus, the perfect King, who forgives all our sins. We can remember how great and powerful and loving he is, and we can trust and obey him.